calories that a regular mouse is eating. Let's say a regular mouse is eating 10 pellets. I'm going to give you 10 pellets, no more. Does the Zucker mouse get obese because he's eating the same amount of food as the regular mouse is eating? He could. So I'm glad the people who had come here were remaining silent. Yes, he does get obese. Okay? So what he does is that he just sits in one place. He has no extra energy. In fact, if you put food at the other end of the pen, he'll waddle up there, eat there, and sit there. So he shows a much greater lack of energy. But let's say we change the conditions even further and we say, hey, we're going to give you only 8 pellets, 80% of what the normal mouse is eating. Does he get obese? So the answer to that is yes. He still gets obese at the expense of eating his organs. He will eat his organs in order to support the fat production. So there is some data that as human diet has changed, our brain size has reduced. Okay, so today I promised you that I'll give you some new information, and this is really groundbreaking new information that will help you manage your day-to-day life. So this is a stomach, and this is the duodenum, which is the next portion after the stomach, and right here are a certain group of cells called the K cells, and they make a polypeptide. We'll call it GIP. So when you eat food, these cells sense that food is there, and the GIP goes and tells insulin to be secreted. It tells the pancreas, make insulin, and it goes and tells the fat cells, hey, get ready, food is coming, we can store fat and get bigger. Okay? So the question is, what makes the body make more or less insulin on the basis of these cells? So the question that we're going to ask is, are some carbs less damaging than others? So in order to explain that, I want to tell you how powerful this effect is. Let's say I take some of you and I find a vein and I infuse glucose solution, sugar solution into you. So it's getting its main line into your blood vessel. Will you have a greater insulin response with that, or by taking the same amount of carbohydrate through your mouth? So the answer is that you will have a greater effect by taking it through the mouth. So here it is shown that this is the insulin response when you eat the amount of sugar, and here is the response when you give it through mainline IV. The reason for that are these cells. These cells get stimulated and make insulin and promote insulin release and fat storage. Now as the food moves down the stream, there are these green cells, and I put that in green, and they produce something called GLP-1. So the nature has a balance. On one hand, it is making insulin being secreted, but on the other hand, it wants to shut down the system because too much insulin should not be secreted. So what GLP-1 does is that it goes and tells the brain that you have eaten enough, it promotes satiety, and it goes and tells the stomach, hey, you know, you remain full, just don't empty yourself up, so that the person doesn't eat more. Okay? So this is the structure of an almond, and there's a reason why I'm putting that up. So this almond has an external layer, which is a fibrous layer, and it has carbohydrate in it too, fat in it too, protein in it too. But the carbohydrate is covered by fiber. In other words, it's a natural, unrefined grain, and when you eat that, the K cells, these cells are not going to see an immediate sugar overload. On the other hand, if you grind up the almond flour, you disrupt the cellular structure of the almond. You will separate the fiber from the carbohydrate. So that's how bread is made. When you make bread and you add fiber later. It is not like the fiber is covering the carbohydrate. So that fiber does absolutely nothing to slow down the production of insulin. So if you were to eat carbohydrate, refined carbohydrate, even if it is ground up almond flour, you're going to get a huge response in insulin secretion and fat storage, and you're going to store some of that energy, and you're not going to get the beneficial effects because all of that is going to be absorbed here, and this effect is going to be muted. Okay, so if you're eating these foods, refined oils, breads, donuts, you are promoting this response and increasing insulin production. And the reason I put this up is because many of you take something called Victoza. These are GLP-1 agonists. Do you know what, any of you take Victoza or similar drug, Byetta, Victoza, or know somebody who takes it? Okay. So I'm putting these slides up principally for people who take these drugs so that they can get the benefit of that drug. Because this is GLP-1, it's supposed to go tell the brain, hey, stop eating. It's supposed to tell the stomach to stop emptying itself. But if a person taking this Victoza is eating all these food, what do you think the GLP is going to tell the pancreas? It's going to tell the pancreas to jack up insulin production. So you're going to lose the benefit of this drug if you're eating carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates or highly processed food. So there is insulin production jacked up. On the other hand, if the same person is eating the good food, which is meats, unrefined grains, olive oil, because fat in and of itself doesn't activate this, it flows down and activates GLP-1, which will promote satiety, and what's going to happen to your insulin response? It's going to be a lot more muted. Okay. So I tell you guys to eat like this, right? I tell you that, hey, what I want you to do is to eat meat, and this is egg yolks with some butter, and this is what Einfeld eats, and when he eats, this is his blood sugar over a 6-hour period. The blood sugar, did it go up? It did not go up, because what he is eating is not activating the release of insulin, it's not increasing sugar levels. Now, he also speaks at bariatric surgery societies in which they cut out a portion of the stomach, and I put this up because I want to talk a little bit about bariatric surgery. So when he went there, he ate this, which is bread and yogurt, a little bit of this toffee, and an apple. So what do you think happened to his blood sugar? So his blood sugar went way up, and at about 4 to 6 hours it came down, and he started feeling a little hungry. Okay, so how many of you know who has had, anybody who's had bariatric surgery or gastric bypass surgery? So some of you know that. Okay. So why is bariatric surgery so successful in dropping weight? Why is bariatric surgery so successful in reversing diabetes?
Because it's like fasting.
So the reason is that you reduce the size of the stomach to a really small pouch, and you bypass the GIP, the cells that are making you make insulin, and the food goes straight down to where the cells are making GLP-1, which is improving satiety. So you can't eat a lot, you're reducing insulin production, you're improving satiety. So even before people lose weight, their diabetes is reversed, which is amazing with these surgeries. Now the reason I'm saying this is because I don't want you to go out there and consider saying, hey, I'm morbidly obese, I want to get bariatric surgery or gastric bypass surgery, because this surgery has a lot of complications. When you reduce the size of the stomach, you don't absorb iron well. Stomach acid is needed for you to absorb iron. Stomach acid is needed for you to absorb vitamin B12. One of the ways our body processes protein is through stomach acid. If you don't have stomach acid, you don't process protein. That's how you process calcium. there are complications of gastric bypass surgery where you do the anastomosis, the esophagus can get a stricture and the esophagus can get dilated. In people who get a gastric band, that band can migrate and cause a stricture in other locations. There can be a leak at the site where they do sutures, and there can be a stricture. You can have fibrous tissue or scar tissue grow in and it can cause a stricture. Now this is an important thing. Why does the body make stomach acid?
Digest protein.
So we said digest protein, absorb vitamins, absorb iron, but I heard out here something very important, which is that it kills the bacteria. Our food has bacteria in it, and it's one of the primary defense mechanisms in our body. Because when we eat food, if we don't kill the bacteria will overgrow in our intestines. So people with stomach surgery, with gastric bypass surgery, with gastric banding, gastric sleeve, are they making less acid or they're making the normal amount of acid? They're making less acid. So you have small bowel bacterial overgrowth, and that overgrowth can increase the risks of leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut syndrome leads to diabetes, arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and other things. All right, so we discussed this, that what enhances the way you process food is that if you eat refined carbohydrate, and also refined carbohydrate with fat, because if you do that, you will jack this up quite dramatically. So here is a study that is looking at a person that is eating a paleo type of diet out here and a standard American diet out here. So when you eat the paleo type of diet, you don't have that response of GIP, which increases insulin, and with the controlled diet you do. And when you eat the paleo type diet, you are increasing the GLP and the PYY. This is very similar to GLP, and this improves satiety, whereas the controlled diet does not, the standard American diet does not do that. Okay, now many of you come and say, hey, I'm doing very good because I am drinking green smoothies. And that is one of the best ways to eat because I'm getting all my vegetables and it is good. But most green smoothies have a little bit of sweet fruit, banana, mango, and some people even put in a little bit of honey in it. Now when you compare that to the fruits, these fruits have the structural integrity of that fruit is good because the carbohydrate is still covered by fiber. So let's see what happens when you grind up food. So here are mice, and these mice are given the standard rat chow pellets, or they're given a sugar and fat like you would get in a smoothie, or a sugar and fat or a high fat diet, but really it's also laden with sugar. You can see that people who are eating smoothies and sugar and fat, the mice here are getting heavier compared to the mice out here. So what you do is that you grind up these three diets. Take a mixer, grind them up, and feed them to the mice. Is there going to be a difference in the diets anymore? Let's take a look. So there's going to be no difference. In fact, you don't even have to label the diet. Okay, I guess that's the WTF response. So in the next 5 minutes, I want to close and I want to tell you a little bit about what is something extremely important for all of us, which is called the personal fat threshold. So what I'm telling you is that eat meat, eat red meat, eat chicken, eat avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, nuts. And I'm asking you to avoid these refined food, refined carbs, and vegetable oils. When you eat this, as you saw in Dave Feldman's presentation, what you eat is put out by the stomach and intestine as a chylomicron. This is an amphibious vehicle that is carrying triglycerides and cholesterol. So it's the energy delivery system that sends energy to the muscles and to the fat cells. Now there are fortunate few amongst us. So these are important points that I'm going to make out here. There are fortunate few in us when they are presented with fat to their fat cells. Their fat cells increase in number. So in other words, their fat cells going from a lower number to a higher number when more energy is delivered. So let's take this person who's eating a lot of food. Food is being sent to the muscles, food is being sent to the fat cells. The fat cells are increasing in number. The fat is not spilling into the bloodstream because it's able to cope and keep the fat in the fat cells. There is an amazing amount of crosstalk between the fat cells in the liver, and this crosstalk tells the liver, because one of the things that liver does is that it puts out about equal amount of sugar by converting fat and protein into sugar compared to what you're eating. So this is a process in the liver called gluconeogenesis. But there is crosstalk between the fat cell that goes and tells the liver, hey, you don't need to make any sugar, shut down. And that is the function of the fat cells through a hormone called adiponectin. So it's saying, hey, enough energy, don't produce any sugar. So let's say you're eating the right way like this, which is the good food. You're making chylomicrons. You don't activate the GIP response because this food is good food. It's not going to increase your insulin production. It's going to increase your GLP production, and it's going to tell your brain you have eaten enough, you can shut down eating. On the other hand, if you eat food that I ask you to avoid, which is refined bread and grains, this GIP, which is making insulin, will go up. You will put a lot of sugar into your bloodstream and a lot of fat into your bloodstream. Now the body is pretty good at dealing with extra food. And what saves you, what saves most people are your fat cells. Your fat cells are your saviors. So what they do is that they go from fewer in number to larger in number. Your insulin is going way up because you are activating the GIP, you are eating a lot of sugar, your insulin levels are going way up, and after some time the muscle cells say, we want to bug out, we are full of food, we don't want to take any more food. So now it's left to your fat cells. So your fat cells have increased in number, now they start enlarging, they enlarge even more, and these are the fortunate few obese people in whom when they eat extra food, they remain healthy. So we have learned so much from you all, because I see a number of moderate to severely obese people who are metabolically healthy, whose blood markers are healthy, they are otherwise healthy, because they can do this number. They can increase their fat cells can enlarge, they can enlarge further and not get inflamed and not spill fat into the bloodstream. So they are like these sumo wrestlers. They eat a lot, their fat cells undergo hyperplasia, that means they increase in number. On the other hand, there are many of us, like I belong to a family who is what is called TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. So when I eat a lot of calories that I'm not burning, my fat cells don't multiply, they become larger. They become so large, at the end of that time they say, hey, no more, I can't take any more energy. They become inflamed, fat spills into the bloodstream, and I get unhealthy. So I have to work a lot harder than the metabolically healthy obese people at remaining healthy. So at some point, this situation, how many years do you think the situation goes in which your insulin levels are up, you're gaining weight, and many people come and tell me that, doc, you tell me about hemoglobin A1C, which is my average blood sugar, it's been a little high for 20 years. Nothing has happened, nothing is going to happen anymore. But that's the duration of time that the body is giving you warnings. In other words, things don't change for 20 years. For 20 years, your body is trying to cope with you and say, hey, you are eating all the wrong stuff. Your insulin and your pancreas keeps up until a point it says, I cannot keep up because I'm just fibrotic, I'm dead, and you're on your own. And that is when you have very high sugars and fat is just spilling into your bloodstream. And when the fat spills into your bloodstream, it gets into your liver, into your muscles, into your heart, and that's when you have disease. So I want to tell you that Shalini, Melissa, Nina, Georgie, when you come to our office, they can look at that blood work better than most physicians and tell you whether you are metabolically healthy or whether you are spilling fat into the bloodstream, whether your body is inflamed. So these are biochemical markers of overstuffed fat cells, which is you may have high insulin levels, high triglycerides and low levels of good cholesterol. They would be CRP and GGT, which are inflammation markers that are up. Your blood sugar may be up. The liver may get deposited into your fat and you can get fatty liver. And if you scanned your belly, you will find fat in your internal organs through scanning techniques. So let's see, now you are here and your fat cells have increased in number, and if you keep doing this, you may be like a sumo wrestler and remain healthy. So you're lucky. On the other hand, we said your pancreas would die off and you would become one of those metabolically unhealthy obese people. So when you look at the sumo wrestler, about 30% of obese people remain healthy despite all the biochemical abnormalities that we are forcing them to do, whereas about 70% of obese people, what happens is that their fat cells become larger, they become inflamed, they attract white blood cells, they attract macrophages. And if you look at the weight of the fat, half of that is fat and half of that is inflammatory cells, like these cells that are fighting infections. Because the fat cells say, we don't know what to do, we are overwhelmed, come in and help us. So the macrophages and the white blood cells come in to help them. So 70% of obese people are metabolically unhealthy, whereas TOFI, people like me, thin on the outside, fat on the inside, they can be metabolically unhealthy thin people, and that can be 30% of people. So you cannot assume that, hey, I'm thin and I'm not spilling fat into my bloodstream, I don't have inflammation markers. So you want to prevent yourself from getting into a worse situation when you are at this level, not at a level when your pancreas is already dead. So that is the reason for this slide. So just 2 more slides and then we finish. So people ask me, what should I do? Dr. Ali, you've given me information about cholesterol, you've given me information about insulin resistance. What is the safest thing for me to do? What should I do?
Eat more good fat.
Eat more good fat is excellent. So out here is all the good fat, butter, lard, olive oil as long as you don't cook with it, and coconut oil as long as you don't cook with it. The safest food, amazingly, and I have said this many times, the safest food for you to eat is an animal-based food. The safest food for you to eat is the animal-based food. Red meat, lamb, eggs, bacon, chicken thighs. I didn't put chicken breast here on purpose. Cheese, sour cream, shrimps, and fatty fish like salmon. So if you want to get healthy, eat animal-based food. That's one of the surefire ways of getting healthy. But let's say you are a vegan. You say, hey, I cannot eat meat, I'm going to be a vegetarian. If you're like that, the question is, can you eat cheese and eggs? But let's say you can't eat even cheese and eggs. Then I would focus on eating whole grains, unprocessed, unrefined food, so that the food moves quickly through your digestive tract, activates the enzymes that promote satiety, and doesn't increase your insulin. So that would be like almonds, quinoa, this is I think chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, green beans, These can still increase your sugar, but if you don't overcook them, they would be okay. This is sweet potatoes. Fruits have to be still limited, especially if you're metabolically unhealthy. What is the difference between eating like this and eating like this? The people who eat like this have to poop a lot more because they're eating a lot of fiber. They'll have more gas. They'll have to eat more frequently. Our body is just not designed to eat a lot of fiber. And in addition to that, when you're eating like this, if you're a vegan, you're not going to get certain important nutrients that you need to supplement. So you need to supplement omega-3 because DHA and EPA are not made from plant food in our body. You need B12, iron, zinc, magnesium. You need to eat a variety of plant to get all the amino acids because not all plants have all the amino acid like meat does. In addition, calcium, vitamin K2 and vitamin D also, but you can get that from sunlight. So that's all I have. I tried to cover cholesterol, insulin resistance, and how our body functions in terms of hunger and satiety, and what is the good food for you to eat and what is the bad food for you not to eat. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, yeah.